The roar of the engine tore through the empty night like a wild animal, echoing off the buildings that lined the deserted streets. Emma's chest heaved, her hands trembling as they gripped the leather seat in front of her. The city lights flickered past in streaks of neon yellow and red, a blur that mirrored the whirlwind of panic inside her. She could hardly breathe, her mind spinning faster than the wheels beneath her. Every heartbeat felt like it might shatter her chest. Her life, luxurious, controlled, and meticulously polished, had just spiraled into chaos. She had always been the one in control. A self-made millionaire before 30, Emma had learned to navigate the world with precision and calculation. Everything in her life had a plan, a timeline, a predictable outcome. Her fortune, her fame, her carefully curated image, all of it was a reflection of her discipline. But tonight, under the harsh glow of flickering streetlights, every shred of control she had ever claimed was gone. "Take me!" she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation, the words tearing out of her throat like a plea she didn't fully understand herself. Her hands clutched the edges of the seat, knuckles white with tension. She couldn't stop shaking, not just from fear, but from the adrenaline coursing through her veins, igniting every nerve ending in her body. Mark, sitting behind the wheel, didn't even flinch. His face, illuminated by the faint dashboard light, was calm, almost unnervingly so. There was a steadiness to him that Emma couldn't comprehend, a quiet, grounded presence that seemed impervious to her panic. He was everything she wasn't, patient, composed, unshakable. His hands, rough and callous from years of labor, gripped the steering wheel with a certainty she found both maddening and mesmerizing. Emma's mind raced. How had she ended up here? A few hours ago, she had been at the top of the world, attending a high-profile gala with champagne and chandeliers, surrounded by people who adored her wealth and status. Now, she was screaming at a mechanic she barely knew, a man whose clothes smelled faintly of grease and motor oil, asking him to save her life. The absurdity of the situation should have made her laugh, or cry, but she had no time for either. Every second counted. The incident had been sudden, violent, and entirely unexpected. One moment, she had been driving her sleek black sports car down the empty avenue, lost in thought, and the next, a delivery truck had swerved in front of her, tires screeching, metal grinding. She had slammed the brakes, swerved to avoid a collision, and ended up skidding off the road, the world spinning around her like a carousel gone mad. Then came Mark. The mechanic had appeared almost out of nowhere, his truck screeching to a halt beside her car. Without hesitation, he had yanked open her door and pulled her out, ignoring the protests of her personal assistant and the flashes of paparazzi cameras. He had been all business, all focus, none of the theatrics she was used to in her world of opulence. And now, as they raced through the city streets, she realized she had no choice but to trust him. "Are you insane?" she shouted, her voice raw, tears stinging her eyes. "Do you know who I am? I could call." "Shh," Mark interrupted, cutting her off gently but firmly. His voice was low, steady, carrying an authority that silenced her mid-sentence. "Forget that. Just stay with me. We're getting out of this." Emma's heart pounded harder. Forget who she was? How could she? Identity had always been her shield, her armor against the world. But in this moment, all of that seemed meaningless. She was just a frightened woman, clinging to a man she barely knew, hoping he could keep her alive. The city around them was a blur of neon and shadow. Streetlights flickered like faulty signals, casting long, wavering streaks of light across their faces. The buildings, tall and imposing, seemed to lean in, watching them as they sped past. Emma's reflection in the car window was a ghostly double, her wide eyes and pale face staring back at her. She didn't recognize herself. She was unguarded, raw, vulnerable, and terrified. Mark didn't speak again for several minutes, his focus entirely on the road. Emma's mind, however, refused to quiet. Memories of her life flashed behind her closed eyelids. Boardrooms filled with ambitious men, luxurious vacations on private yachts, champagne glasses clinking under crystal chandeliers. But none of it mattered now. None of it had prepared her for this, racing through the night with a man who smelled of engine oil, fleeing an accident she hadn't even anticipated. Her voice shook as she spoke again. Why aren't you scared?" Mark glanced at her briefly, his dark eyes calm and unwavering. "Fear doesn't help anyone right now," he said simply, before returning his gaze to the road. "Focus on holding on. That's all that matters." There was something in his tone, something unyielding and sure, that made Emma's chest tighten. He wasn't saying what she wanted to hear. He wasn't reassuring her that everything would be fine with platitudes or promises. But there was a weight in his presence that grounded her. Somehow, she found herself clinging to it. The car sped through empty intersections, tires screeching softly on the asphalt. Emma's stomach lurched with every sharp turn, every sudden swerve, but Mark's hands never wavered. He was like a captain steering a ship through a storm, every movement deliberate, precise, controlled. She realized with a jolt that this man, this mechanic, was the only constant in the chaos surrounding her. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps as she tried to calm herself. She knew she needed to be rational, to think clearly, but her body refused to cooperate. Panic clawed at her chest, her limbs shaking, her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. And yet, beneath the fear, there was a strange, almost painful sense of clarity. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't performing, wasn't hiding behind her wealth or her status. She was just a human being, and it terrified her, and strangely, it exhilarated her. Mark's voice cut through the storm in her mind again. "Emma, look at me." She turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze. His eyes were dark, steady, unflinching, and in them, she saw a calm that she couldn't explain. It was almost as if he had lived through 1,000 crises and emerged unbroken every time. She felt a strange pull toward him, a need to trust, to surrender herself to the rhythm of his certainty. "Hold on a little longer," he said, almost as if reading her thoughts. "We're almost there." Emma wanted to argue, to demand more, to scream her frustration at the unfairness of life, but she couldn't. There was no energy left in her for anything but survival. And in that moment, as the city lights streaked past and the wind whipped against the windows, she realized something she hadn't understood before. Some people didn't need to prove their worth with words or actions. Some people simply existed in a way that made you feel safe, even when the world was falling apart. Her mind wandered briefly to the absurdity of it all. A millionaire, screaming at a mechanic in the middle of a city at night, asking to be taken somewhere unknown. If anyone had told her this story even a day ago, she would have laughed at the audacity, at the impossibility, at the sheer lack of logic. But now logic didn't matter. Fear didn't matter. Only survival mattered. And in the midst of her chaos, she felt it, a flicker of trust, fragile and small, but real. She didn't know how or why it had formed so quickly, but it was there, anchored in the quiet strength of the man driving her through the night. It was a trust she had never extended before, not to anyone. Not to business partners, not to friends, not even to lovers. And yet, here it was, growing steadily, insistently, like a tiny flame refusing to be snuffed out. The streets ahead twisted and turned, narrow alleys giving way to broader avenues, streetlights flickering like beacons guiding them through the darkness. Emma's heart rate began to slow slightly, her panic tempered by the rhythm of Mark's driving. She began to notice details she hadn't before, the way his hands moved with practiced precision, the quiet hum of the engine beneath them, the steady beat of his pulse beneath her fingertips as she gripped the seat in front of her. He was alive, real, and unshakably human. And yet she couldn't help but wonder, would he understand her world if she showed it to him? Would he see past the wealth, the fame, the meticulously crafted image, and recognize the person beneath? Or was he simply a man who existed in the moment, capable of saving lives but incapable of comprehending lives built on excess and performance? The thought was fleeting. It didn't matter. Not now. Not when every second felt like it could be her last. She closed her eyes briefly, took a deep breath, and let herself trust him, fully, completely, without reservation. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. And terrifying as it was, she realized she didn't mind. Mark's voice broke the silence again, calm and unwavering. "We're almost there. Just a little further." Emma opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. In that moment, a strange sense of peace washed over her. She didn't know what awaited her at the end of this journey, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty.